Michael O'Hanlon, welcome. So what do you make of the US strategy so far and the strength of these sanctions announced in the last few hours?
Greetings. Well, the good news is it is a US strategy, yes, but also a NATO and EU strategy. I think we're pretty well unified, so there's some strength there. Also, I think the basic notion of not threatening warfare, not threatening NATO military intervention over Ukraine is correct. I don't think that this merits World War III. But I do think that President Biden is also right to make it clear to Russia that there will be huge economic consequences. In fact, I don't think we've gone quite far enough. We're targeting the potential future expansion of gas exports, for example, when you mentioned Nord Stream 2. That's not enough. I think we have to threaten a cutoff or at least a gradual weaning of ourselves off of Russian oil and gas over the next 3 to 5 years and really taking away from Russia that main source of its export revenue. And also, that's the stick. The other part on the diplomacy side that I would personally advocate, although many would not, is to start a process whereby we could envision Ukraine not joining NATO ever, if there is some other way to protect it. And Russia's going to have to play its part clearly in that. So I don't think we should just concede to Putin's demands. But the whole idea of inviting Ukraine and Georgia into NATO in the first place back in 2008 was a questionable idea from the start. We've had no timetable, no interim security guarantee. We sort of painted a bullseye on their backs in the way we did this. And I think we should rethink the basic construct. But again, not a free lunch for Russia, not a blank check. It's going to have to help us find a new way to enhance Ukraine's security. And I would try that kind of a dialogue at the same time that we're threatening tougher economic punishment should large-scale war ensue.
So as far as you're concerned, should the West have offered the NATO agreement, the NATO agreement on Ukraine earlier than now?
Yeah, I think it was a mistake in 2008 when President Bush, who was at that time advocating his freedom agenda, and as you know, many Australians were fighting shoulder to shoulder with Americans in the broader Middle East, trying to advance, counterterrorism, but also democracy in places like Afghanistan. And Bush realized that he needed to find a bigger, loftier way that would stitch all these, unpleasant military undertakings into a broader concept. And so he developed the Freedom Agenda. And part of that was to expand NATO as much as possible in Central and Eastern Europe. And I just think he pushed it too far. Some other NATO leaders felt the same way. And so when Bush advocated that NATO offer membership to Ukraine right then, back in 2008, the compromise was, no, let's just say we'll do it someday. But unfortunately, that someday was never specified. And in the meantime, we gave Ukraine no promise of military defense or protection. And we also said that we had longstanding NATO policy, if your borders remain contested, you can't join. So you put all that together, it's a perverse set of incentives that essentially invited Russia to make this kind of mischief. I'm not defending Putin by any stretch of the imagination, but we didn't have a smart policy, and I think it's time to rethink it.
Will these sanctions be enough to deter Putin from moving any further beyond Donetsk and Luhansk?
I'm afraid they may not. I'm afraid at this point he's escalated this crisis above and beyond what I had expected even a few weeks ago. And it's pretty hard for him to back down at this point without getting some lasting confidence that he has changed the basic orientation of Ukraine. And if anything, by slicing off small pieces of it, he probably increases the resilience and conviction of the rest of Ukraine that they want to join the West and not stay close to Russia. So if he were to stop right now, at least in his own mind, he probably thinks that he hasn't achieved enough to really improve his long-term posture. So I think we really need to think. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So if Putin moves on Kiev, how will this play out militarily?
Well, he'll probably win in the sense he'll take some big cities pretty soon, but he may lose thousands of troops along the way and kill thousands of Ukrainians, which is not going to sit very well with this whole argument that they're one people. And then on top of that, he could face a guerrilla resistance of one type or another. It's very hard to predict. We didn't expect it when we went into Iraq in 2003. He doesn't seem to expect it now, Putin, that is, but he might be wrong. And the Ukrainians may decide to really try to bleed him, even at some ongoing cost to their own country and people. So that's the part that's militarily unpredictable. I think Putin can certainly see some of the key cities and strong points in the country fairly fast, but that's not the same as winning the war.
But if the West still has these other sanctions in the locker, if they were to bring them out pretty promptly, do you think that would head off any further moves by Putin?
See, I'm not sure. That's what I regret to assess right now. That it doesn't seem like it's enough. It just if you look at what we've been saying for the last few weeks and what Putin's continued to do and to prepare, it looks like he's decided to double down and maybe decide that we would flinch first, or maybe just accept the economic pain because he's an old-fashioned leader who seems to care more about territory and power than he does about prosperity. I think that's a foolish calculation for him because even if he wants to stay in power 15 more years, I think this guarantees that Russia will be penalized by the rest of the world for the entirety of his remaining presidency. So I think he's making a major miscalculation, but the way he sees the world, it may still be a cost worth paying unless he gets a change in Ukraine's security orientation. So I'm quite worried. A few weeks ago, I thought there'd be a way to avert this war. Now I think it's going to take something pretty clever and pretty special.
Okay, we'll have to leave there. Michael O'Hanlon from the Brookings Institution. Thanks for talking to us from Washington.
Thank you kindly.